host, and this is the Gold Digger Podcast, where we're digging the dirt and finding the gold in people's lives. Grab a cuppa, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Before we start digging for gold, I just want to acknowledge that I'm broadcasting from Wajak Noongar Budja here in sunny Perth and pay my respects to the traditional custodians of this land, both past and present. As you know, this podcast is about unearthing the wisdom from ordinary people's lives. What personal goals have they set for themselves? What challenges have they had to overcome to achieve these goals? And what is their process that they use and adopt in how they go about their day-to-day business? Before we get down and dirty with Chantal, our next guest, and start digging around in her life, I want to share with you a quote. And this quote is by a gentleman called Joseph B. Worthlin. And he said, "As with the butterfly, adversity is necessary to build character in people." And I'll read that again. As with the butterfly, adversity is necessary to build character in people. For a long time, I've understood that the butterfly's journey from the chrysalis to full-flighted freedom. As you may know, that if the butterfly doesn't break the cocoon on its own strength, then it becomes grounded. It has to use its wings or else it won't develop the strength to be able to fly. And I know this is the truth in my own life. When I've been helped by others and they've taken away my power, it may have felt good, it may have been easy, but it has kept me in a limited space. And when the day came that I had to do it all myself, wow, that was so different. And when I broke free of that limiting belief that I had to rely on others, what an amazing feeling and the freedom that came to me. And I'll give you an example of that. In my life, I had a bad situation and I had to move out of that bad situation. And on the day I had to move, my partner had a migraine, so was unable to help me. Consequently, I had to drive a 5-ton truck and I had to drive it from one end of the city to the other end of the city and back, and, you know, reverse into driveways and try not to take out power lines and everything like that. And I remember looking at that truck and feeling so daunted at the prospect because I'd relied so heavily on my partner for so many things. And one of those was this idea of only men can do these big things. But I did it, and I moved all of our furniture from one end of the city to the other end of the city, and I did that with some help from some girlfriends, and I felt so powerful because I had found my wings and I had pushed through that limiting belief. And yesterday I was watching Netflix, a show called Snowflake Mountain, which is about teenagers who are conned into going to what they think is going to be a luxury resort to film a reality TV show, but turns out to be a survival wilderness camp with army leaders, and watching their journey of understanding their limitations and breaking through those limitations was so amazing and inspiring. And I know that our next guest is a woman who has been to the boundaries of her own self, hit some walls and bounced forward, scooping up all the wisdom so that she could use that to make the world a better place for herself and others. And so we met through Women Can International over a decade ago, and I invited her to be the cover story for a magazine I was editing called Finally at 40 Life Begins magazine, because I wanted someone who represented all those women entrepreneurs out there who created products and who had the courage to take them to market. And at that time, she was making skincare products, but you will find out that she's now had her own growth journey. I'm just going to tell you that she's an author at Unfold Your Freedom, and I'm going to let her tell you the rest about herself. Welcome, Chantal Vanderhaeghen.
Thank you, Hayley. Oh, my gosh, what a lovely introduction. And I love that quote.
Great quote, isn't it?
Yes, and it made me think about how true that is. You know, and I was thinking then what popped into my mind was how the Buddha said, it took me a long time to understand, you need to be in the struggle to find the happiness. So It's that same sort of thing. You've got to be in there to find your strengths, to use them, then to be able to come out again and shine, fly, you know, be happy.
Oh, absolutely. And we're going to sort of have a bit of a conversation around that. But before I start digging for that gold in your life, Chantal, I'd like to ask you a question I ask all of my guests. It's just a getting to know you question. If you could choose an animal that most closely aligns with your personality and character, which animal would you choose and why?
That is interesting because a couple come to mind. But recently, tigress. And I just look at it, the power, the strength, the protection of her little ones, even though I've not been a mother. That's another story, but that's part of what I've experienced in life. But and they've got this most beautiful, they're so majestic, these animals, and their markings. And my partner and I had the pleasure of, I think, nearly 3-4 years ago now, going to India because he's a big photographer and actually seeing them in the wild. And it was just wild, literally. And what it taught me, and we'll come back to that, is how animals understand how to support their own nervous systems.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, let's come back to that because that's, an intriguing thought. Just so you know the animal you're working with today, Chantal, today I'm feeling a bit like Mother Duck. I feel like my chicks are not in a row today. I've been trying to corral them and get them in order and get them to cross the road safely, but they've been wanting to run in all directions. So I'm a bit like that Mother Duck today. Quack, quack. Back on track, little ones. And, because life tasks can just get away from you, I think, sometimes. And, getting things, your ducks in a row can be a bit of a challenge. So can you introduce yourself, Chantal, and tell us a bit about who you are and what you do and why you do?
Well, lovely to be here. As we said, my name's Chantal and I'm a psychotherapist now. And I'm doing what I do because I really want to be able to offer women what was offered to me through support, through psychotherapy, talk therapy, whichever way you want to call it. Plus, I call myself also a divine psychotherapist because I bring in all sorts of other modalities as well, because I realized over the years, therapy wasn't just about mindset, wasn't just about talk therapy, and it's now becoming a lot more research been happening over the last, I suppose, decade. So it's a lot more about somatic body, feeling, going deep within. And that was my experience. So I suppose it started off when childhood trauma, and you don't talk about it at the time. So I'm nearly 60, so it's only now, even things are still, it's amazing how far we've gone, but not gone with all of this, so I've done all sorts of different therapies and all sorts of different to support myself. But I think my two big things that really changed my life. First one was my father's death, unexpected death. But even then, at the time, we didn't talk about PTSD. We talked about even grief. I had a brilliant grief counselor, but we didn't talk about PTSD. Then roughly 10 years later, I had a minor car accident, but that's what triggered me into complex PTSD.
I can relate to that, having lost my mother in a car accident and me having my own car accident a few months prior to her death. It wasn't until after her death that I had that PTSD reaction to being in a car. And I used to grip the doors of the car going 40 Ks was too fast for me.
Yes.
It was terrifying for a very long time. Yeah. It probably took me a good 4 or 5 years actually to not be afraid in the car.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I agree with you. And what I realized was, so coming back, like your mother was, you see, for me, when I look back at the car accident itself, it was benign, as they call it. This is Peter Levine from Walking the Tiger. So I couldn't understand why. Yes, I had severe whiplash. Yes, violent migraines. Yes, I was all of that. But I couldn't understand why I was such a mess. I went from high functioning to low functioning in a nanosecond.
Yes. Yep.
Couldn't get in a car. I traveled all around the world because I'm part European. I was brought up in Europe and traveled everywhere, both sides, spoke languages, had a reasonable career going on and could do everything. Suddenly I couldn't get off the couch.
Yeah.
Absolutely terrifying.
Yep. Our body has a way of trying to protect us. And it can really undo us at times, I think. It does take a lot of self-awareness and work. I think it's complex trauma. I watched a video online from a clinical psychologist, and she said 3 T's for complex trauma: talking, time, and tears.
Yes.
A lot of talking, a lot of time, and a lot of tears has been my experience.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me sort of some of the things that you learnt from that experience, Chantal? I'm sure that was probably one of your biggest things you had to overcome, was hitting that wall.
Oh, look, we could go on forever here. I think the biggest thing in the end was never, ever underestimate what can create trauma. Never underestimate someone else's experience. You might not get it, you might not understand it, but never belittle someone for that. Hold them in the space. And that's why I like Brené Brown's work with empathy.
Yes.
We don't have the same stories, but we share emotions.
Yes, that certainly rings true with me. I'm engaged in work at the Grief Centre, where I'm the chairman of the committee there, and my understanding of grief and helping, with writing the resources, supporting that process, is we all have a grief story.
Yes.
But it's not the same story.
That's right.
And so our grief journey, like our trauma journey, and all trauma has a grief associated with it, is going to be individual. And so therefore you can't look at another human being's experience and try and box it and timeline it,
That's exactly. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, you're right. Each person's going to be different. I think that's right. What you were sort of saying.
It is. And what I learned over the years, particularly in the last couple of years, even more so now that my presence is back, my memory's back, my concentration's back, because I went through menopause at the same time, early menopause. So, so I had no clue who I was. I was so lost and confused, but I put on this brave face. So coming back to the skincare range, in the end, I had to let it go, because two things I realized was, I'm still have myself forgiveness. It kept me going, but I'd actually taken the trauma into my business. See, we don't link that at the moment. That's why I'm doing what I do, is to connect those dots.
Yes.
Not only that, I realized my business had become my trauma.
Yes.
It was such a huge realization.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I needed to let it go for me, because I needed to let go of the energy to step into something different.
Yes.
That was one point I was going to make. And the second point, coming back to, like you said, why everyone's experience is different, is because when you have that experience, it's where you are at the time, what values you bring in, what support system you have, perhaps what therapy have you had or not. So all these things come into play.
Yes. Yep.
And as they say, it can be the smallest thing that actually triggers the biggest response. And you're sitting there going, what on earth had happened here? And others but really it's actually from something perhaps way back.
Yes, because your cells have a memory.
That's exactly right. Or it can be, so people misunderstand, you can have traumas, so lots of little experiences, like mine was complex, or it can be one experience.
Yes.
And it can be also vicarious. You can be experiencing it because you've seen something happen.
Yes.
Or you've taken on someone else's trauma that's become yours. You've internalized it, or somehow you felt guilty, or it was your fault. I mean, who knows? These are the things that come up with trauma. And they're all the things that I needed to work through, was this lack of understanding. See, also when I was triggered, it was nearly 14 years ago, we didn't have the information that we have now. We didn't have access to all the like the podcasts you're doing, like I do something similar. I do a YouTube and that, to start talking about trauma, but also us talking about it. Like I was so delighted when you accepted me on, was because we need to talk about our lived experiences to show other men or women, or men and women, is that we can look, okay, at the moment we're on a podcast, but if you would see us, I'm a normal looking person.
Yes.
I come across, yeah. And you put on those brave faces, you put on that brave facade. And everyone, I wear color, I'm vibrant. People know I've traveled around the world, so people would never think that inside I'm actually dying, I'm actually struggling, I'm actually having panic attacks and anxiety attacks, and my no sense of self, a lot of self-doubt.
Yes, it's amazing. How people do assume personas for others because it makes other people feel safe or secure. Right. An example of that is in my current job, I do a small amount of support work for carers within the mental health space. And when I started doing this work, I was very triggered by people's stories. And I remember one day I'm on the phone. They would have had no idea because I didn't let them know, but they're telling their story and I was weeping the whole way through my support call for them because their story was my story. It was so aligned with my experiences. And I think that in these moments, we just have to be gracious to ourselves and gracious with others. Like, I'm very big on allowing people to allow the emotion of what it is that they're experiencing to have voice. And I don't mean like, going around smashing up places because you're feeling white hot anger. I'm talking about when you feel sadness, being allowed to feel sad and allow that sadness to pass through us. I remember early in my training, we had a nun come and teach on grief. This is when I was full-time at college. This is the year before my mother died. And this nun came in and she talked about the grief cycle and the process of grieving. And she explained to us that whatever you are feeling, give it expression. If it's writing poetry or it's screaming into your pillow or it's allowing the tears to fall, whatever it is that you are experiencing, give it a way to be expressed safely. And then she described a friend who died of cancer and her 2 children who survived, and the 18-year-old that was so together and did the funeral, and everyone thought she was amazing, and who suicided 12 months after her mother's death. And she associated that with that young woman not grieving, not giving herself permission to grieve because she had to be strong for a younger sister and for everybody that was around her. So I think what you're talking about is this, as a community, we need to learn to grieve.
We need to learn to grieve. We need to learn, because I'm part French, so we showed emotions.
Yes.
Mum's English, Australian, don't show emotions.
Yeah.
So, I had this conflict going on because on one hand I was called too emotional, and I had my, even before I was always emotional. That's just part of my humanness. But then to have trauma on top of that, man, like you said, I could just be so relieved to get somewhere in the car when I was at the height. I'd burst into tears. This is presenting my products to someone, or, standing in front of a crowd of women to talk. I just stand there and cry. But what I did is I learned to turn that around and go, hey guys, this is where I'm at right now.
Yes. Yeah.
This is what's happening. I want it to be real, and I want to show you it's okay to show. Because the other thing I learned is that when we have trauma or we don't express, we freeze. But also, if you think about where's all this emotion going in your body, see, it will transfer into your body and it'll come through, whether it be major illness or small things or niggles, aches and pains. So I talk about this in a webinar that I've created on how trauma can manifest itself, obviously not only emotionally, mentally, physically, but also bring in the spiritual side, because we forget there's a spiritual side too. Yeah. And I didn't realize I'd so disconnected from my intuition and spirit that was the last thing that healed over the last few years. And I'm so relieved. That part of me is back. And that's why I use all this Reiki, meditation, tapping, the chakras, the Akashic records, because that's part of being able to look at you as a whole human being. But initially, I needed to find the words to be able to explain what had happened to me, and that took years.
Yeah, and look, I can really relate to that as a woman. We are such complex beings. We want to tie off everything. We want this to connect to that and how it all fits together. We want to unravel it all. I'm constantly processing what's going on and giving that expression. I think that is the challenge.
Yes.
Understanding what it is we actually need in the moment is the challenge, and being able to have the confidence and the courage to speak that out. I think that's a real big challenge. I think what we might do is just take a break for a minute, because I'm loving where we're headed with this, Chantal, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper. So let's just take a couple of minutes break and we'll be back.
Voices going round in my head, I don't believe them, don't believe what they said, but the light is calling, it's calling, someone help me darkness consumes me. It consumes me. I just can't find who I need to be. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see. Just can't get moving with missing pieces of my soul. Nothing feels like it used to anymore. So many people want a piece of me. I'm drowning, and they see.
You're listening to the Gold Digger podcast, and I'm your host, Hayley Solich. We're chatting with Chantal Vanderhaeghen, author at Unfold Your Freedom. And we've been talking a bit about trauma and how it has affected your life, Chantal, and my life even, and ways to sort of, to think about that and give it voice to it. I wanted to ask you, being a mature aged woman, as I am, what has been the biggest challenge for you in terms of how you express yourself and be heard?
Oh, that's a big question, because I've been talking about that for quite a while, about this ageism.
Yes.
And everyone mentions something like that. I feel myself burning inside. There's this rage comes up, like ageism, because you're going to get older. And I never saw my mum and her friends and my grandma's old, because as I said, we're nearly 60. But I'm suddenly going, oh my gosh, can't get a job. You shouldn't have grey hair. You shouldn't be this. You shouldn't be that, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like I've only just woken up in a way, because having been from the age of, it was 46 when I had the accident, really 10, 12 years, where I was in this freeze funk, not present sort of type thing. Yes, I was coming through it, absolutely. It's only been in the last couple of years where I've really gone, whoa, I'm here. And then I'm like, I'm 16, according to the world or people, I'm meant to be too old to be doing anything. Really? I feel like I'm starting life. I'm not in a new phase of my life.
Yes, yes.
And in a way, it's more exciting than before, because you get to this stage in your life. I've dealt with a lot of the trauma. It'll always be part of me. But I've learned through my own psychotherapist and trauma healer, but she's helped me heal, is that you learn to manage it. So I understand I still have the occasional panic attack. I still get certain things. But I now have strategies in place how to support myself. Okay, so there's that. Yeah. And I've gone completely blank, which is what happens because I get so excited. What was I saying?
Well, I was actually going to ask you, how have you managed it, and what sort of strategies do you use? Are you able to share a couple of those strategies?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Number one, I was trained by Eric Harrison, who's was a meditation teacher. He's now retired. He called it insight meditation. I do offer guided meditations, but I really believe for you to heal at another level, to get you out of your head and into your body, you go into a meditation where you don't have guided meditations, anyone else. So you tune into your body. Mm-hmm. Your body tells you. This is what we were talking about earlier. There's that. I work with tapping, EFT tapping, which I really like. I have Reiki. I've had Reiki for 30 years anyhow. So they're all the things that I work with. So coming back to this age, I think I've woken up and gone, that's right, I'm in another stage of my life because I've dealt with nearly all the trauma. I've dealt with the major traumas in my life. There'll always be something, as we said earlier. And I can now see that I can be adventurous again. I can get out there again. Yes, my body's changed. Yes, I have less energy. Yes, I have certain things that are PTSD related that I needed to come to terms with, which is anxiety, which I used to never have. Mm-hmm. So I don't have quite the same to get out there, but I'm doing things in a way. You worry a lot less about what people think. I never thought that, sure, I still want to get nice comments. Sure, I don't want to get, horrible comments. But it's like, you know what? I'm here. I'm doing life in my own way at last.
Yes. Yeah, fantastic.
At last. And those tools I mentioned to you helped. Do you know what I did 2 years ago, particularly with what happened with lockdowns and all that in our lives? I actually took the courage and did take courage to step into the unknown of letting go of everything. So that's why I call my business Unfold Your Freedom. But I needed to unbind to be able to unfold.
Yes.
So I had to step into the unknown and truly trust myself. And that's where I've got my backbone. And that's coming back to the quote you said. I found my wings. It took me longer than I thought.
Mm.
But it's like I needed to let go of everything that I've known in my life, how to no longer be the good girl, no how long I want to be with my family, no longer I wanted to be with my business, friends, just life.
Yeah.
Because who am I? Who do I want to open up to be? And here I am, and it's exciting.
No, that's beautiful. Chameleon's probably my other animal that I most relate to because, in my lifetime I've had so many different reemergences, changing of colour to suit the circumstance. And I love that you have found something that you didn't recognise or see was you earlier. And I think this is about coming of age. I think that as we come of age, we do unlock in ourselves that wisdom and that knowledge of who we are and the knowledge about what makes us happy and the knowledge about what doesn't, to be honest. And we become less tolerant of what doesn't and more capable of speaking up for ourselves. I think they call that grumpy old man syndrome. But
that's exactly right.
Not that I ever have that much, but I have found myself complaining a little bit more as I've got older about things that I'm less tolerant of. Who has been the greatest influences in your life? I guess that's one of the questions I have.
That's an interesting one. Basically my partner of now nearly 16 years, he gave me something I'd never experienced before, was love and acceptance. Because I met him 3 years before I had the accident.
Yes.
And 2 years we'd been living together up in the beautiful hills of Perth. And it was on the second anniversary. I was coming home. We were going to have champagne and celebrate. That's when I had the accident. Now, he didn't tell me until years later. He actually didn't get what had happened to me. He had no clue what had happened to me and why I was going through what I was going through. Yet he accepted me.
Yeah, beautiful.
He accepted the fact that I sat on the couch for months and months and couldn't get off it, that I, like you said earlier, cried my eyes out, didn't sleep in the bathroom because of my violent headaches. And I look back now and he was unerring in that, Hayley. He could have walked away, because I've heard stories of other women where their partners have walked away. He didn't.
That's beautiful. And he's such a beautiful jewelry maker.
Yes, isn't he ever?
So
I should see now but yes. And interestingly enough, this is going off track a bit, but he had his own scare nearly 6 years ago. We're lucky he's alive. And through the anesthetics and all the medication, he's lost all that. He's now doing photography.
Ah, okay. Wow. No, he's a beautiful jewelry maker.
Isn't he ever? I know. I still love wearing all his pieces.
Yeah, beautiful. I'm sorry to hear that, but maybe photography has found an amazing artist.
It has, and we've been going on journeys. He's showing me now, coming back in a way with trauma and healing. Do you know about nature? I think this also comes with age. Also living up in the hills of Perth, I was such a city girl, but I've realised how healing our property has been in the bush around us. Yeah. But because he does wildlife photography, but also birds, he's showing me nature in a way we wouldn't see.
Beautiful. So beautiful.
It is, and it's bringing me into this whole different concept of slowing life down as well.
Yes.
Being present, what it means to really be present, hearing the birds, or the animals, you know?
Well, it's interesting you say that because on Snowflake Mountain, that Netflix show I watched, they put two young people in what they call Last Chance Lake, which is basically two little humpies that are open where there's lots of bugs and spiders and bats, and it's supposed to scare the bejeebers out of them and get them to comply. But this one guy, Randy, went there and it opened his eyes to nature again. And he was lying on his back looking up at the stars and with wonder. You know, this is the kid that was locked in his room at home doing nothing. And suddenly he was the nature guy, you know, in the whole group, appreciating so much what was around him. So I get that. You know, nature is such a wonderful teacher about life and systems and how things work. And certainly my husband, when he had a 3-month stint in a tent out on a bush paddock on his own when he was at his worst with PTSD, he flourished living in his little tent. It was harsh, but the birds were the things that kept him alive. Like that, he watched and studied the birds and the way that the systems worked. And so I can see the value, really see the value in that. What have you most regretted on this journey?
Well, the obvious I'm going to say is not knowing then what I know now. You know, because people say, and that, what was it you just asked me?
What you most regret?
Oh, and not having children, but that was just circumstance. So that's a big thing. That's another story.
Yeah.
But I read on a post a while ago, this woman wrote, would you have your life again, or, you know, something on those lines? And everyone, no, I'd have my life the same way because I wouldn't be who I am now. And I was the only one who wrote, no, I wouldn't do this again. Got to be kidding. No way would I do this again, you know? And she didn't respond to it. No one answered me back. And I said, well, I'm who I am now. Of course, I can't go back. But would I do this lifetime again? No way would I do it again, Hayley.
No, we do it so much better because we have wisdom. And they say youth is wasted on the young. And I think that's so true, certainly in my case. So what's been the most joyous part of this journey for you?
Well, now that I'm out of it all, I just think life. I've had a lot more joy than I realised, a lot more experiences. Because when you're living under constant threat, like in the childhood, it was violent. And even though we brought up in Australia, I was brought up in Europe, in Switzerland, you know, we had the most amazing life on the outside. I never saw that, Hayley. I couldn't, because you're so busy surviving. It didn't matter where you lived and what food you ate, you know, because we had a good life. We travelled a lot living in Switzerland. So it's only in the last few years when that veil's come off, and I've done a lot of healing around my late father, and now with my mother, even though she's still with us, I can actually go, wow, Hayley, I had an incredible life. And only now can I say to you, I will start drawing on that.
It is hard when you're in trauma. It is hard.
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
And because I came from a childhood with similar trauma, and I still say to myself, how would I have been had that not been my childhood? Yes. What difference would that have made in my life to my choices that I've made? And I don't know how you unpick that and, you know, really how you untangle that from who you are. But seeing that through a positive frame and reframing those times in your life, I think is really helpful.
It is, because then you start to open up. It takes a lot away of that. Not woe is me, that sort of, it just changes the whole way you think.
Yes.
You know, and I think the biggest thing I've learned, coming back to what was said earlier about we want to make sense of life, find words. So even when I was meditating, I was still trying to make sense. I was still analysing. Also, it's part of my makeup as a person that I am. Mm-hmm. So what I've learned recently is to actually drop out of my mind into my body. And I'm working with an Aboriginal psychologist who's a Buddhist who's taken me through his experience to the land.
Beautiful.
Like with the land. It's incredible to change. Yeah. So coming back, so what he's teaching me is to see the joy in my life for who I am now, because he's had to take me into aspects of me that I didn't know that I have this
that
most
locked up. Yes.
Yeah. I had never touched on. I never believed that I'm attractive, beautiful, intelligent, charming, delightful. I mean, the fact that I'm even saying this to you now and to the listeners is quite, do I really meant to say that? But yes, this is why we do the work we do, Hayley, is to show other people let's help them unlock it. Unlock it.
Yeah, beautiful.
to bring that joy into their lives, the joy, contentment, beauty, not only beauty within, beauty around you. I mean, my life is changing, as you might be able to, well, you've known me for a while, from where I was, or both of us. Think about where we were then and where we are now.
Very, very different. Very, very different. And that is the truth of life. If you hold people lightly, you allow them the opportunity to evolve and to become whoever they are. You know, we can have many personas as individuals and not have a mental illness. You know, we can have many aspects of our own individual personality. You know, if you think about even from a tasking perspective, writer, psychotherapist, businesswoman, wife, you know, and there's all those creative things that you've been engaged in as well. So, you know, you can have so many different parts of your personality that you're going to focus on in your lifetime, over a lifetime. I think we sometimes people see us in a certain way and they want to box us, and I guess that's my message is forget the box, because I will destroy the box accidentally every time because I don't fit well in boxes. And I'm sure that you're the same, Chantal. And I think that's the grace that we can bring to one another is, who are you in this moment?
Yes.
That's who you are in this moment is perfectly acceptable because it's an expression of who you are. And no one gets to control that but you.
Exactly. And I think the box was interesting you say that, because I squeezed myself into the box. I was made to at the time, so I was a child. So for various reasons, with my mother's name and my father being, and then I was squeezed into the foreigner box. It's only recently, like you said, I wasn't meant to fit in any box, but I became such a good girl. Yes. You know, even though I rebelled in some ways, I didn't in others. So like you said, let's bring that box out. And I think that's also why I like the training that I had, and also my psychologist, now my supervisor, is the person-centered therapy, because, again, it's about when you come and see someone like myself, I see you for who you are.
Yes.
Like you said, we draw that out. We like gold digging. It's perfect.
Yeah. We explore together.
Exactly. We explore together, and ultimately, you know, but it's just you having someone to show you that you know, someone to guide you, someone to hold you in that space. Yeah,
no, fascinating. Oh, look, we'll have to have a chat at another point, I think, around, you know, therapy and the value of therapy. I think that that could be a really interesting discussion. I am going to have to leave it there because of time, unfortunately. But thank you so much, Chantal. I've really loved having the conversation and seeing your personal growth. That's a true joy to me. And thank you so much for giving me your time, which is valuable, to come and to share your wisdom with us today.
Thank you, Hayley, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Is there? I'll give you one opportunity to share a 15-second wisdom message with the world, if that's not too much pressure.
Always have hope, and there is life after trauma, and there's the most beautiful person underneath that trauma.
Beautiful. Always have hope. There is life after trauma, and there is a beautiful person underneath the trauma. That's beautiful. Thank you, Chantal. Your open-hearted responses are really valued by me. I really appreciate that. You've been listening to the Gold Digger podcast, where we've been chatting with Chantal Vanderhaeghen, author of Unlock Your Freedom. If you'd like to know more about Chantal's work, where can they find out about you, Chantal?
I've got a Facebook biz page, Unfold Your Freedom. I've got a YouTube channel. I think it comes under Chantal Vanderhaeghen, my name, but it's Unfold Your Freedom. And I'm also an Insight Timer teacher as well. So they're the three main places you can find me.
Fantastic. We'll catch up with you next time on the Gold Digger podcast. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to the Gold Digger podcast. I'm Hayley Solich, your host, and we've been chatting with Chantal Vanderhaeghen. I'd love it if you could please comment, post, like, share, put it out into social media and help us let people know about this podcast. Thank you.